Hello, everybody. I'm really glad this worked. I'll wait a couple minutes for you guys to start trickling in. That way we can dive in. So essentially, I'll wait a couple more minutes, but while you guys are here, I'll explain today's live training and what we're going to be discussing. I know a couple of you started sending me messages after I was asking what kind of trainings you want to see, which I really, really appreciate because I want to make sure that this is geared around you and what your current needs are at the time. Because me personally, if you haven't met me, I have a huge passion for education, training, and that kind of stuff. It's something that I've been doing in my past roles when I had my 9 to 5, even before that with part-time jobs. And it's something that I realized was missing to some extent in my business now as a full-time entrepreneur. And it's something that slowly but surely I've been incorporating more and more and more. So this Facebook group, I'm hoping that it will be a way to get more in-depth trainings other than just Instagram lives or Instagram stories, which are really capped and it's limited as to like how deep you can go in things because people aren't as attentive and as focused inside Instagram. So this group is 100% for you guys, for me to share whatever value or experiences I have. So when it comes to content creation, which is what we're talking about today, I know there's a lot of things we could probably talk about. Like there's even one of the things that we won't cover today, but if you're interested, let me know. Copywriting, like that obviously helps your content and make sure that it's as optimized as possible, that it actually resonates with the right audience and has the right messaging and actually sells. But what I had to do today is come up with, okay, what about content creation can we focus on? That's a little bit of like a good introduction and a good place for us to start so that you have the tools to make sure that your content is purposeful and you're not just putting out stuff, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, whatever social media platform you prefer, just for the sake of putting content out there and showing up and being consistent. We want to make sure that whatever it is that you're putting out there has a point, has a purpose, and is trying to drive a result inside of your business so you can actually move the needle forward as opposed to just making yourself busy coming up with captions and stories and challenges and whatever else just for the sake of showing up like I. So with that being said, let's get into this training. The way that I want to break it out is first into content buckets, as that's a big part of content creation. And the reason being that when you have these content buckets and you understand the different types of content that you can put out there on social media, it becomes much easier to go ahead and create the content as opposed to having to spend a lot of time trying to come up with, okay, what does my audience want? What's going to sound interesting? What's actually going to get the likes and the comments and the engagement? You already have a framework. All you got to do is look at your little calendar and go, okay, this is the content, the brand pillar or the content bucket that I got to talk about today. This is the type of content I want to put out. And let's just come up with a caption that has something to do with my overall goal. So we'll get into content buckets first. There's two main sections that I want to break out into. The first being the brand pillars. This is something that could also be called the bucket or the topic. There's so many words that you could really describe it in. But essentially, what I want you to do if you don't have this already, and let me know in the comments if you do have your content buckets figured out already. If you do, how many do you have? I'm super curious about that. I personally have five content buckets right now. And the reason why I have five, like some people say, oh, I have four, maybe have it in between 6 or 8. So it really doesn't matter. You can have a small amount like 1 or 2. You can have 8. It doesn't matter. But the reason why I really like 5 is that gives me 5 contents to wrote. Actually, now that I think about it, yeah, so I used to have 5, and I'll explain my thought process. I had to cut one out because I realized I was spreading myself too thin. I was trying to be the expert in so many things, and at that point, I was like, you know what? No, I want to be known for branding and the processes around like design and that kind of stuff. So I ended up cutting my stuff down. But so tangent, the reason I have 4 now is if it's stupid, but it fits perfectly inside of a month. It's 1 per week, and that's how I rotate them. That way, if I talk about, let's say, the design process on week 1, that allows me to make sure if people miss my content on Monday or Tuesday, they still catch me during the rest of the week talking about the same stuff, and it really drives down that topic and it allows you to position yourself as an expert with the like the ability to touch as many people as possible, because not everybody is going to see your post every day or your stories. They may be either busy with client work or they may be out having fun, whatever it may be. So having a week per topic allows me to be able to show up and touch as many people as possible with that one topic. The only reason I cut it is, like I mentioned, because I felt that I was touching on too many things that I believed I was an expert in. I was like, you know what, like I need to pick my bread and butter essentially and focus on that one. So for those of you that either have content buckets or don't, we'll go into how to come up with yours or how to fine tune the ones that you have to make sure that they're most productive, beneficial for your business as possible. So when you have the brand pillars, there's 3 different ways in which you can come up with those pillars or content buckets. The first one is to figure out what your expert topic is. So figure out, okay, are you a brand designer? Are you a social media manager? Like, what's your title? What do you do on a daily basis as part of like your services and your offers? And figure out from that 1 or 2 things that you say, I'm the expert in this. So as an example, I mentioned the design process. That's just something I'm really passionate about because I love templates and figuring out how to seamlessly create a process so that it just kind of runs on autopilot and I don't have to like recreate things over and over again. So it's something that I've been doing for so long that I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm an expert in that. The reason you want to find 1 or 2 topics that you're an expert in and that are related to your services is that, 1, you can talk about that one subject to death. You can talk about it every morning, every night, while you sleep. You don't have to struggle to come up with content around that because it comes naturally and you're so passionate about it. The reason why you want it to be based around one of your offers is because you want to be able to talk about something that you're so passionate that you can always bring back into sales. If you're only having content buckets that have nothing to do with your offers, it's not going to give you the opportunity to then pitch your services to your audience. And this is a big problem because if you're not pitching your services to your audience ever, you can't exactly complain when you're not getting clients, because people, for the most part, unless you've established yourself to like a certain extent where you've grown so much and people are just coming to you and they know you and you're like this kind of like, what's that word called? Like this brand name, you're going to have to go out there and ask for the sale more often than not. So without asking, you can't exactly expect people to come knocking at your door and send you DMs left, right, and center asking to work with you if you've never even told them what you do or that you have spots available or whatever it may be, that you have a special offer going on, right? So the one way that you can come up with 1 or 2 brand pillar topics is to figure out what you're an expert in. The next way that you can come up with this is to look at your brand values. The way that you can do this is, if you don't have your brand values figured out yet, it's really like, what do you stand for as a business, as a brand, as a person? The reason why this can matter and really help your content is because these are things that you value and it's very likely your ideal client may value as well. So for example, if you're into philanthropy or you really value relationship building or you really value authenticity, honesty, trust, whatever, there's so many different keywords that could qualify as a brand value. You have to figure out what those are, and they're great topics to start embedding into your content because they're things that people are going to resonate with and they're going to feel like they have something in common. And that's when they start to like you a little bit better. They get to know you a little bit better, more as a person as opposed to just like a company. And I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this, but people are much more inclined nowadays to buy from something that they feel a connection to, that's an actual person, as opposed to just a random company who they have no connection, no relationship, no ties to. You want to be able to create that emotional connection with them. So you had your expert topics, you have your brand values. So at this point, you probably have like 2 to 3, maybe even 4 content buckets. The last one I want you to consider is your brand personality. This is a really, really powerful way to then go ahead, that extra step, and create a connection, like a deeper connection with your audience, because you're truly being you, your authentic self, and that should come naturally. And people should know who you are, what you're like, whether that means like I tend to do this and I've noticed it's something that I want to do and show my audience even more. Like, I'm weird. Like, if you watch me at home, like drinking wine, sitting on the couch, like making weird noises and laughing and I don't know, like watching odd shows, playing weird card games, like it's nothing special, but it's special to who I am, and I feel like I'm a dork and I have these like random passions and whatever, and they're things that to some extent I was hiding from my audience. But as soon as you let those shine in your personality, that can be a content bucket, because whether it's like every Friday you introduce yourself, or once a week you do like a big get to know me kind of video thing, whether it's IGTV or on stories, whichever way you decide to communicate that with your audience, you become much more real and much more likable. And people are going to go, I'm weird too. I like wine too. I like this too. And that's where you can really build relationships. And those relationships, they don't gotta be clients, like not necessarily. There's a lot of relationships you can build that is just like supportive. It gives you a sense of community. It could be referrals, it could be anything, but it can, yes, it can be clients. Like a lot of people, if you're going to be working with them for several months, you want to be able to get along with them. So let me know so far how this sounds. So it's expert topics, brand values, brand personality. Let me know. I'd love to know. I know I struggled with injecting some brand personality into my brand previously. I think I was doing it, but maybe more subconsciously. And now I'm getting to the point where I want to be more active around that. So let me know, are you currently injecting your true, authentic brand personality into your content? Yes or no? By the way, the answer is no, nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to force you to start injecting brand personality. It can be so powerful. All right. So, content creation, we came up with our buckets. Now there's a flip side to that, which is the types of content. The reason why this can be really helpful is because your content will be varied. You won't feel like you're always trying to sell, and you'll be able to better build those relationships so that it can actually convert into sale, as opposed to just being too predictable or boring, or it's just there's like no depth or body to what you're putting out and no purpose. So the different types of content, the first one I'd love to share with you, there's about five, I want to say 4 or 5. So the first one is doing something relatable. So this is super easy and is one of the most simple ones. It's just to share something that, I don't know, it could be a quote. Like there's a lot of people, you know, that whole Twitter graphic where some people are actually tweeting and then they're resharing that on Instagram, and other people are creating those on Canva. Like they're easy to make. But the point of that is that you're able to share something that then can be shared amongst other people. It can get more engagement. It gives it a little bit of personality. So it's probably one of the first types of content you can create. It's just something relatable, simple as that. The next one is where you really position yourself as an authority. And this is where you're going to get people to start thinking of you as somebody they can hire. And you start getting that, start psychologically getting people to think that they can buy from you. So essentially, you're getting them to convert. That's educational content. So you're positioning yourself as a leader in your field. So this is when you're most likely going to be talking about your expert topics and teaching your audience on something. It could be a tip, it could be a tutorial, like a how-to guide, it could be an easy carousel, like giving different steps on how you do something. But the point is, and do keep this in mind, that you want to educate them on something that is actually valuable and is going to help your specific ideal client. Because if you're not focusing on them and what information you can provide for them specifically, then you're kind of just educating the masses, and that's not going to convert, because you need to make sure that your ideal client is top of mind in order to hit all the points, whether it's the emotional connection, the education, the promotion, the pain points. Everything has to hit a trigger so that you slowly start getting them to, whether consciously or subconsciously, think, oh my goodness, they have what I need in order to bring my business to the next level, or in order to get that next sale, or in order to quit my 9 to 5, whatever transformation you're trying to provide for them. They need to subconsciously start thinking of you, to the point that when you actually make that promotion post and go through like a launch or whatever it is that you do in order to get those offers and those conversions, they will be at your doorstep at that point, because you are the natural solution and the expert and the leader that they have resonated with and they get along with, etc. So educational content, this is one of the most powerful ones you can use. And the reason why I like to outline all 5 different types of content is because then you can rotate them. I know that if you're inside a launch, you're going to be heavy on education and social proof and all that, and that's perfectly understandable. But if you're not on a launch, you want to make sure to sprinkle it and spread it out as much as possible in order to not create overwhelm. But there's a difference between knowing how to build a successful business and actually implementing the work. If you're not implementing this and making these plans and figuring out what your content's going to say, etc., not that it's the biggest and most powerful like business growing skill or strategy, but if you're missing out on it, you're not getting the word out, right? So you're not going to be as successful if you're not doing all this. I always worry people will get bored of the same thing every day. Exactly. I used to, so when I started rotating my content, that was earlier this year. Before that, I'll be honest, I didn't have a strategy, and it wasn't really converting like on Instagram. All I was doing is I was using Facebook to find clients, and Instagram was kind of like I was getting some referrals here and there, but I wasn't getting true traction on my content. Whereas now I get a lot of people, whether it's commenting or DMing after the fact and being like, that was actually really helpful, or I love that, that was funny, whatever it is. People actually resonate with it more now. And the way I had started is I was actually doing 2 weeks of design content and brand content, and then 2 weeks of Instagram marketing content. So I would rotate that. So whether it's 1 week that you rotate, 2 weeks, try whatever system works the best for you and just play and have fun with it, because it is social media. So we definitely don't want to get overwhelmed with this and think that it's this like big mysterious thing. So it's just about finding the system that works with you by using some standard practices and strategies that do work for the general public. But you got to find your special, I don't want to call it a niche, but your special formula, I guess, for you and your business. Come up with a formula, and I can definitely help and guide you through that. I'll actually probably, if we don't run out of time, I'll touch on it a little bit today on how to essentially warm up your audience and then do a pitch. At a minimum, even if you don't land clients with this tiny formula, it will get you used, and it will be like, okay, finally, I told my audience that I had offers or that I had spots open or whatever it is that you're promoting. And it will get the ball rolling. It's almost like ripping the Band-Aid and getting you more comfortable with talking about the services and talking about the fact that, hey, you're open for business. Perfect. So then I want to challenge you guys, the ones that know these strategies, and even the ones that don't know them, but haven't consistently been implementing them, make sure you're taking notes, even if it's just high level, like, okay, brand pillars. I'll go through them again. Brand pillars, you need to know, in order to come up with those pillars or those content buckets, you need your expert topics, your brand values, and brand personality in order to give it that extra spice. So with those three, you can come up with the content pillars that you can talk about on a weekly basis or rotate them monthly. Then the types of content, so far we've gone into relatable and educational, and I'll go into the next one now. So the next type of content is promotional material. So this is exactly what we were kind of leading into. So this doesn't always have to be, hey, I'm selling. Because I know for a lot of people, especially if you haven't like flat out sold yet, it can feel a little bit salesy, awkward, pushy, inauthentic, whatever way you want to describe it. It's just, you cringe, essentially. You don't want to be that person that's out there selling. I get it. So promotional content and type of content doesn't have to be salesy all the time. It can actually be as simple as sharing testimonials. So simple. That's word of mouth from somebody else who says you're amazing, either personality wise, it can be the type of work that you do is amazing, it can be working with you, it's just amazing and refreshing and seamless and professional and whatever. Put those testimonials out there, and that's going to get people to start thinking that, hey, at a minimum, you're wicked. Even if they're not thinking of working with you right now, you started to subconsciously convince them that you're a potential good fit for something down the line. So testimonials is one way of sharing promotional content. Otherwise, you can showcase your portfolio. If you're a designer, that's an easy sell. But even if you're not a designer, there's other ways to showcase what it is that you do for clients, whether that's screenshots of things, etc. So then you can share transformational stories. So if you have worked with somebody, whether you've charged them or done it for free or at a low price, whatever, you've still provided a transformation for somebody, or even for yourself. For you to share stories about how your business and your life changed because of something that you implemented and that you can also implement for other people is a great way of making it real. So all those things, there's plenty of ways that you can come up to essentially promote your service services without saying, hey, I'm hiring, hey, I'm taking on clients, it can still subconsciously get people, you warm them up, you get them, you're nurturing those leads because you're getting them to see you as that solution to a potential problem. So that was the third one. Going forward, there's engagement type of content. So this is anything, it doesn't necessarily have to do with what you write out, but it can also more specifically have to do with what it is that you're posting physically. So one of the easiest ways to do this is by doing carousels. Those are ones that are really popular on Instagram right now because they do get higher engagement. Sometimes if your content itself is falling flat, fine, it won't get the best engagement, but at a minimum, people are spending time in that post scrolling through. That is engagement. Okay. Instagram knows that you're spending time physically going through your specific content. So that's going to boost the algorithm. That's going to get more eyes on it, et cetera, et cetera. So if you pair that up with a really good caption, a really good design, content, whatever you want to call it, you're going to have more engagement on that. So that's just a way to spice things up, even if you're, I don't know, you don't feel like educating, you don't feel like you don't have a special quote or anything. You can still share something about your process, something about that's going out in the world, something that relates to your ideal client. It doesn't matter what the content is, but it's about either yourselves, including a call to action at the end. Ask people to share your content, ask people to save your content, ask people to comment, to like. All those prompts and call to actions are asking people to engage with you. And that's going to help your content because not only does it help with the algorithm, but you're actually building relationships through that because people start taking action. They're doing what you say, they're sharing, they're liking it, they're doing whatever it is that you're asking them to do. And by taking physical action with somebody's content, you subconsciously, again, it's a psychological thing where you're becoming more attracted to that kind of content because you see them more, you recognize them more, you think of them more. So it's all about creating those deeper connections that you might not notice at first, but down the line, when you compound all of those, these are leads that are going to be more willing and more ready to go ahead and work with you, whether to hire you for brand design or whatever it is that you're offering at the time. Carousels are so much hard work. I need to get back on them though. You should. And I wonder, maybe this is not a good question for this training, but why is it that you're finding it hard? Is it the design part or coming up with the content? Because don't get me wrong, I've heard people who actually are really ahead, like in as far as like business goes, and they're doing like immensely well, they're super popular, and they'll talk about how it takes them like 2 to 3 hours to create a carousel, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, it does not take that long. Like, I don't know what they're coming up with, like what kind of content, or maybe it's just, it's harder. I don't know what's going into the creation of that type of content, but I have an Illustrator file with potential carousels, and I just go in and like retype things, I recolor them, I add weird arrows and graphics in between to make it like seamless and pretty. But it's long. So maybe it just seems like a little overwhelming. Design time. Okay, it takes you ages to design it. Yeah, up with content. Okay, so design time, I think you need to make it a little bit easier on you. So use specific, I was just going to say that. Okay, I tend to try to do fancy Photoshop things though. Yeah, I was about to comment on that. I think that has a huge thing to do with it. It's probably the only thing that's making it take you that long to create the content. What I would do is, I'm not going to say don't do them, because you got to do what makes you happy and whatever, so that you actually continuously create the content and you're proud of it, etc., and like happy to post it. That being said, maybe don't force yourself to make sure that every single carousel has those types of photoshopped graphics and GIFs and whatever in them. So, or maybe don't include as many. Like, I know you've done a really good job of making sure that almost every single slide has an illustration in it. Maybe only put one or two in one graphic. Maybe do one that has none, or that only has one in the cover, so it catches people's attention and then they swipe through for the information. And there's some that go all out, and if that's something that you want to be known for because you love it and you think it looks good, definitely do it. But I wouldn't put yourself to make sure that every single time it's quote unquote perfect, because perfection is what's going to hold you back in the long term. Love carousels that are one image in 2 or 3 slides. Absolutely. It's a little bit. I don't know if you have Adobe Illustrator, but if you do, you can do them there. But I've also heard you can do them on Canva. So it's pretty easy to make sure that things float. The one thing I've seen, and this might just be my personal preference, but I don't see it working that well, is when people put actual text in between the slides, like images, graphics, arrows, like that kind of stuff. But I've had the text thing and I've been sitting there on my phone trying to like hold it perfectly so I can read that in between. And that I just find a little bit frustrating. So that's like my only, not pet peeve, but thing that irks me a little bit. Maybe automate by using the same Photoshop filter or action with each post to save time. Yes, that's definitely a good idea to have, whether it's pre-saved, whether it's presets or whatever else. 100%, anything you can do to automate or like simplify the process helps. I think in Holly's specific situation, she actually goes ahead and finds images. Like let's say she'll find a picture of a monkey and she'll Photoshop the background and then use the monkey as like a floating graphic. So she goes all out. She takes it seriously. Okay. Thanks. That's a good idea. I tend to do cutouts with people, so it takes a while to mask them all from the background. Yes. Actually, okay, this might be really helpful because I'm assuming obviously you use Photoshop for that. I keep seeing an ad on my phone, and next time I see it, or if I can find the name of it, I'll let you know. But it keeps telling me, it's Canva, it keeps telling me that it will remove the background automatically. So you don't have to go with like the lasso tool or anything like that. It will actually do it for you. So that might be a really good tool for you to just kind of like make the process quick. You'll still have to find the images, but then you can most likely very quickly and easily with that app, whatever it is, I'll swear I'll try to find it, get those graphics going. Okay, so I'm gonna go back on track. We've covered 3 so far. So four so far. So the last one's actually very different because it's not posts or anything like that, although it can end on your feed, and that's just IGTVs. So if you're not on stories on a consistent basis, maybe IGTV might be kind of like a next, like a second or third step down the line. But IGTVs are a great way to create so many different types of content that can provide variety, increase engagement, and that kind of connection because people are up and watching you and listening to you for a longer period of time. So that's something that you can incorporate so many different types of content. You can educate. So if you have a tutorial, like a mini tutorial or some tips or something that you want to share about your business or anything like that, that's a little bit longer than, let's say, 10 slides, you might want to leave it off of stories and take advantage of IGTV for multiple reasons. One, you can share it automatically onto your feed. So then when people see that, they can see that you've got content that goes above and beyond just a post. So it looks more varied. It automatically looks like it's educational and like you're providing more value to your audience, which makes you look a little bit better. And then it also stores it on the IGTV feed itself. So people can go back and revisit all these trainings. So it's just a different way to spice that up. If you want to do one IGTV a week, or even if not that often, if it's just every now and then you want to kind of throw what in there, it's just a great way. These are just types of content is to spice things up and change them. So those types of contents were relatable, educational, promotional, engaging, and IGTV. So at this point, you should have the tools that you need in order to create the content itself and know what it is that you're going to put out. So by having your topics, and by having the types of content, what I do is now I know that I don't remember what this week is right now, I'll be honest, because it's Friday, and Friday I just shared some like personal content. But essentially, you would have this week, let's say I talk about branding. So I already know what the topic is. And then because there's 5 types of content, I go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that means Monday, I got to share something relatable about branding. So maybe I'll share a funny quote. Tuesday, I got to educate. So let me teach something about branding that maybe my audience doesn't know. Wednesday, I got to promote. Okay, so let me share a testimonial and do like a little call to action at the end. It becomes that easy that yes, you still have to come up with the text, but at that point it's so guided that you're thinking much less, and all you got to come up with, okay, what is one tip that I can share today? So it should be that easy. Let me know, is this something that you're currently doing, or are you going to do it? That's actually a much better question. Are you going to plan out your content for the next week, the next month, whatever it may be? Let me know in the comments. The next section that I want to go in, because now we already know how to create content and we have talked throughout those different types of content and pillars, how that can psychologically get people to essentially convert on the download. So when you do make that sale, that offer, that promotion, they're ready to say yes. But I do want to go a little bit more to help you get a sense of how you can structure your content so that you can then convert. And this has everything to do with planning with purpose. So I don't want you to just rotate the weeks and say, okay, I'll be doing, as an example, branding this week. I'll do websites this week. I'll do Instagram this week, and then I'll start again or whatever, right? That's perfectly fine if you're in a time period around the year, month, or whatever quarter where you're just putting out content and you're working on stuff on the back end. Perfectly fine. It keeps you going. But what I want you to do is become much more strategic with that. And I'll tell you what I do. Like, I actually plan out my entire year based on what kind of projects and offers am I going to have throughout that year. And then based on that, I plan out my content. So that guarantees that when I'm ready to put out a certain offer or whatever, I've already been talking about that for a while. I've been educating, I've been warming up my client. So they're more open to that idea, concept, whatever it is that I'm about to do. So glad we're talking about this. Social media marketing is where I'm most uncomfortable. So these different content pillars and ideas make it far less intimidating. I wasn't sure. I know you mentioned social media. So I was like, oh, there's so many things we could probably cover. So I'm glad this is one that's helpful for you. If you guys, again, I know I've said this before, but if you have any questions, pop them in. I'll be happy to address these. But otherwise, we have the plan with purpose section of the training, and then we'll be wrapped up for the day. So getting back into it, when it comes to planning with purpose, the first thing that I want you to do is set your goals up. So you don't have to look at the entire year if you're either not sure what that's going to look like, or you find that too intimidating, whatever it might be, or it's just too much to do and too overwhelming, whatever the quote unquote excuse is, for lack of a better word, that's perfectly fine. But try and plan out and set goals out for a certain amount of period. So let's say a quarter. Okay. So if we're starting with that, we're looking at, okay, so what income do you want for that quarter? Pick a number that makes sense, that makes you happy, that you think is somewhat attainable, and start with that. So then what you want to do is figure out, okay, so how many sales do you have to make in order to reach that goal? The point is that you want to understand how many sales you need to make a certain month so that you know how many times you need to promote, or how many leads you need to attract, or however many numbers for anything you need to hit in order to make those sales. And why that matters is because once you know what months, like maybe one month you need to land 2 clients, but the next you need none. Whatever it may be, that can help you structure how you want to outline your content. So maybe if the month of, let's say, June, you want to land 3 brand design clients, that means that in May, the month before, you want to go hard educating and finding leads and et cetera, to make sure that that content actually serves a purpose. Because otherwise, if you want to land 3 clients in June and in May you're talking about, I don't know, let's say you're talking about web design, but you actually have no more spots available for web design and you want to sell brand design packages. If you're not talking about brand design and you're not educating around that, and you're not promoting it, and you're not showing testimonials, social proof, whatever, people aren't going to be ready or thinking about you for June. So that's exactly where you start getting a little bit smarter and more strategic in how you're creating all of your content. So you do your goal setting, you figure out where it is that you want to sell what, whether it's services, maybe you have courses, ebooks, whatever you might have, like passive income streams. You figure out all that stuff and structure it out. This is not set in stone. I totally get that, but having some sort of goal in mind gives you something to strive for. And that makes a big difference, as opposed to just going willy-nilly and not really knowing what direction you're taking your business in, because then everything you're trying, because it has no purpose, you can easily drop it off and kind of like not try your hardest, because you're like, oh, well, I'm just doing this to get content out. Whereas if you're saying, I'm doing this specifically today because I'm planning to land a client in 3 weeks or whatever, you're going to show up much stronger and much more dedicated than if you weren't. So we set our goals. Next, you want to go ahead and make a plan. So you got to schedule everything out. The offers that I mentioned, like when do you want to land everything else, but then you got to figure out, okay, so when do you need to do X, Y, Z? So for example, if you need more leads, then focus on content that's going to generate more leads, whether that means sharing free value, giving away freebies, like attracting people from Facebook to your Instagram, whatever it may be. Figure out what attraction tactics you want to use inside of your business so that you can have a bigger audience that you can then nurture and convert towards the end. So in essence, whether it's that, like whether you're trying to attract people or whether you're trying to nurture them and educate them, or whether you're trying to then actually go into promotion mode, you got to schedule all that out. So like I said, if we're looking at June, the month before, you want to start the month giving away free value. You want to continue the month educating, teasing, promoting, whatever you want to do. And you want to end it with a bang so that then you can go ahead and at that point, you should have either landed clients because you found them or you attracted them, etc. Or at least they're already enough for the final pitch, whether that's passive, active, whatever kind of income. So content creation is not just about coming up with what to say and what to talk about, but it's thinking long term, and it's thinking ahead of time and trying to figure out what can I say today that is going to get me a sale tomorrow. The best place to start really is to have some sort of plan, strategy, whatever you want to call it, because once you have that foundation set out, then everything you're doing is based on that foundation. So whether that means that you know your ideal client, or you know your messaging, you know your services, all that stuff is going to make you feel more confident, which sounds like it's what you're feeling right now. And that's a perfect foundation to then start promoting, to start showing up, to start doing everything, because that confidence is going to show. Like maybe even if it's not about showing, it's going to ensure that you show up consistently and excited and whatever. And it's going to be subconscious. If you're not confident, people still can't tell. But you being confident goes that extra mile and it makes a huge difference. So planning with purpose, you did the goal setting, you did your planning, and finally it's just your content, which once you figure out, okay, am I attracting, am I teasing, am I educating, am I nurturing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have that. That's when you start figuring out, okay, if I've got to attract now, then let me talk about the freebies for this week. You can change it up, especially if you're trying to reach a certain goal. You don't always have to follow your rotations that you have set out week by week based on your content pillars. You can throw all that out the window, because trust me, literally nothing that you do in your business is set in stone. If things are working differently, or you realize you feel more comfortable if you have an extra week to nurture your leads, or you feel more comfortable if maybe instead of talking 1 week about brand design, you talk about it 2 weeks because you feel that it didn't resonate well enough. You are the boss. You're running your own business. So you can throw everything out the window and focus on what tactics and what kind of content do you think is actually going to help you meet that goal that you're striving for. So by then planning out your content, you decide, okay, week 1, I'm going to be doing lots of freebies or lots of valuable educational content around brand design. Then I'm going to do the same the next week. Then the next week, I'm going to start promoting, and I don't know, you'll have like a sign up list, whatever tactics you want to use, you schedule them all out. And then that's so helpful, because then you have a written guide and plan that you can look at on a daily basis if you need to, if you're forgetting or you feel demotivated, that says, okay, today, not only are you doing, let's say, relatable content on brand design, but you're also going to promote your freebie. Awesome. So for that day, you don't have to worry about Instagram and what to say and what to do, because you know you'll have to put up a post. You can talk about the post on your stories. You can post little promotional content on your stories about that freebie. And by the end of the day, it comes much more naturally, because you're not overthinking about it and you're not worrying about it. So with that all said and done, I think I mentioned this towards the beginning, but the biggest tip I can give you is make sure that regardless of the content pillars that you pick and the types of content that you use and what your goals are and all that, do keep in mind that every piece of content that you're creating has to be geared towards your audience. So you have to be able to help your audience, whether that is help them like right then and there with a piece of content, like you provide a mini transformation or whatever, or at a minimum, you have to open up their eyes to the possibility, to the potential of what that transformation could be. So sometimes it's not about educating 24/7. Sometimes it's just about giving people hope that, okay, there is a way to solve my problems. This is a potential person. And it just kind of plants the seed in their mind and just gets them to start thinking. And down the line, the more you educate, and the more you nurture, and the more whatever, that seed will continue to grow until they'll realize that it is time to work with you, because they're sick and tired of waiting around and they want the transformation to happen today. So at this point, we've actually covered everything that I had planned out to talk about content creation. So like I mentioned, I know there's a lot of other tactics you can use, like the types of words you use, copywriting. There's different formulas that you can include within your content to make it more exciting and to grab people's attention. But that's maybe a little bit too deep, and we're already about like 45 minutes in, so I'm gonna cut it there. It's something that I do want to continue to do. So I know some of you already recommended some content, like some topics on trainings and all that kind of stuff, and I have a huge tracking sheet with all those, so I'll make sure to touch them and create content around that. But if either during this training or at a different time you do think of something that you think, hey, maybe Steph can on that, or share her experience or whatever, her point of view, let me know and I can go ahead and add that and create a training around it, because I want to make sure to do, we'll start with like one weekly. If they become really successful and you guys love them, we'll do a little bit more, but for now we'll start with one a week, see where that goes. We'll have fun with it and just use this group, just, I don't know, to create a community, to have fun and to learn. I really appreciate you guys. Love every single one of you, and have an amazing Friday and an amazing weekend. Now I'm gonna learn how to turn this off because everything looks different. For anybody watching the replay, comment below. Let me know if you like it or not. Feel free to ask. I will be back to answer them shortly. Have an amazing weekend.